just whilst people are still taking their final seats, my name's Paul, and I was a teacher here. I now work for a charity called the Ministry of Eco-Education, and we travel the country visiting schools, inspiring young people and teachers to teach about sustainability. But today, I'm going to tell you a story about sustainability, not in the future, something that is happening right now and has actually been happening for decades. And this is a really positive news story about being green and behaving in a way that is beneficial to the planet that has been going on for decades. So hopefully you leave this room thinking, actually, I've been inspired, this stuff is happening, and it is possible. It all centres around the man at the middle of this picture. His name is Dale Vince. He is Dale Vince OVE. He's received a knighthood from, at the time, it was the Queen. And Dale is described as an eco-entrepreneur, a maverick. He's someone who does things differently, but he's succeeding in business, but also in helping create a more sustainable planet. And what we're going to do today is jump through some of his different businesses and focus on the science of those businesses and understand how actually being innovative and creative can help push the boundaries of what's possible and move beyond business as usual or the status quo. And actually, by being creative, thinking differently, we can come up with ways to do things that are beneficial for the planet, for the rest of nature, and for all of us around here as well. Dale's got a saying, actually, it's underneath Sky Diamond, called Another Way, and it's the phrase he always uses, and we'll unpick that later on, but those words, another way, maybe epitomises some of what we're going to have a look at. Now we're going to start with a video from Dale.
We're Ecotricity. We build green energy. We don't greenwash. We use the profits from our customers' energy bills to make this happen. We call it turning bills into mills. And so far, we've built 74 windmills, 3 sun mills, and 1 gas mill. We urgently need to end the use of fossil fuels. Our planet can't wait. What will you help us build next? Join Ecotricity today. Build green energy.
So there he is, stood on the top of a 60-metre wind turbine. This was filmed only recently. It's a new Sky advert that Ecotricity is running. Ecotricity is Dale's, I guess, biggest first business that he set up. We'll explore it a bit more in a second. It's a renewable energy company. It's the UK's greenest energy provider. And this is a wind turbine, part of a wind farm that Ecotricity has built. Yeah, Dale there stood at the top of it. Now, Dale has had an interesting journey, and it might not be the one that you traditionally think of in terms of a successful business person. Now, let's see if we can jump. Let's go here. So, Dale is 62. He was born in 1961. He was born over in Norfolk. Again, pretty unassuming place. Now, Dale actually started out as a New Age traveller. Does anyone know what a New Age traveller is? He spent a long time in some pretty unorthodox and different vehicles. He lived in an old ambulance for a while. He travelled around the UK at a time when actually this was a big movement. So New Age travellers and lots of people, this was sort of during the 80s, people travelling around living quite alternative lifestyles. So not having a fixed abode, moving about, and he did that for quite a while. And actually, so this is where he ended up in Stroud, and this is the key location. So near Bristol, this is somewhere we're going to return to. So he was born, actually I might be able to point this out. Not going to point it, but Norfolk up on the east coast there. Now, this is a pivotal moment in the story. So these are photos from something called the Battle of the Beanfield. And it doesn't sound that dramatic, does it? A bean field. It was literally a farmer's field, but this was quite a pivotal moment in the 80s when the Thatcher government, the Tory government at the time, decided that they didn't like the look of these New Age travellers. They were causing a bit of inconvenience, and what they decided to do was sort of clamp down on them. And this was the pinnacle of it, a big battle where the police sort of cornered these New Age travellers, and you can see some of the vehicles that they were in. and were quite brutal in their kind of attacks, and you can see some of that as well. Dale was part of this. Dale, at the time, was driving a pickup truck to kind of help tow away vehicles. Now, following on from that then, Dale sort of realised actually he wanted to do something a bit more productive then. You know, he'd been travelling around as a New Age traveller, he'd sort of had some really unorthodox experiences, but then he started gravitating towards Glastonbury Festival, and actually a lot of these New Age travellers, there was this movement where they went, as part of their annual kind of journeys, stopped off at these sorts of music festivals. And I'm sure you've all heard of Glastonbury Music Festival, again over kind of the southwest. Now, Dale did have a wind turbine on his van that he was driving around, you know, because he couldn't just sort of, it wasn't in a normal house, he couldn't just get electricity like you would, you know, where maybe you live or like in this building. So he had a wind turbine that provided him with electricity. At the time, you know, people didn't necessarily use as much electricity as we might do now. So he wasn't that reliant on it. But this, particularly in 1994, was a year at Glastonbury where people started turning up with really old school mobile phones. So massive bricks that you couldn't fit in your pocket. And actually, Dale had some of those at the festival, and he decided to offer people a phone call. You might have been at a music festival and you think, oh, actually, I want to ring someone else. Or they wanted to charge up their mobile phone. So Dale set something up called Wind Phones, and it was just simply using this old sort of scaffold tower, and at the top of it, he fixed a wind turbine. And it was quite successful. There was a lot of people who wanted to charge their mobile phones. And that got Dale thinking. So he did this for a few years, and he thought, actually, there's some legs in this. I can do something else with it. So the next stage was actually over in Stroud, where we just saw there, he decided to build his own wind turbine. And it was in 1994 that they actually started construction of this. And at the time, it's 40 metres high, and it was the tallest wind turbine in the UK at the time. So he was very much one of the first, and you'll see this throughout the whole story. Dale was always pushing and wanting to be the first. And, kind of almost, he had that mindset, thinking that actually these things are possible, I can just make them happen. But there were quite a few hurdles to this wind turbine. So one of them was planning permission. It took years to be able to get the permission to be able to build this wind turbine. But also one of the challenges with building a wind turbine like this is then realising how you can sell the electricity that it creates. And at the time, back in the 90s, there wasn't really a big market for this, and there were lots of monopolies, there were lots of big companies across the UK who really had the handle on that. And it meant that anyone who built one like this didn't actually get much money to sell their electricity. So Dale wanted to challenge that as well. And again, that was part of his movement into this market. This is part of what he was doing. So, let's go. Where are we going now? We're going to 1997. This was a pivotal moment in the climate movement. So alongside Dale realising, actually, I want to get more involved in renewable energy, I can really have a positive impact there. He also recognised climate change. This was the third COP. Does anyone know what COP we've just had? What number was it? I guess it was 20-something, COP 28. We're on COP 28 now. This was COP3 in Kyoto. And actually, this is one of the ones, a bit like Paris, that there is perceived to be a really positive outcome. There was the Kyoto Protocol, and it was one of the first times where governments agreed to reduce their carbon emissions. They committed to that. And Dale was there. Dale was part of the, not necessarily the key discussions, but he was meeting people. At this time, these kind of COP conferences were a bit easier for people to just go and visit and kind of hang around, I guess. It's a far stricter setup now. The last one was in, does anyone know where the last one was? In Dubai, yeah. The previous year it was in Egypt. We now have these annually because we consider this to be so important. So these COPs, and this particular is a really important part of the journey as well. Now, this is another milestone. Now, does anyone recognise this building? Yeah? You don't know what it's called though, or? No? Does anyone know? The O2, because it's sponsored by O2. At the time, in the millennium, it was called the Millennium Dome. And actually, Dale, he'd set up this wind turbine, started selling green or renewable electricity, and he managed to get the contract for the Millennium Dome. So Dale provided, or Ecotricity provided the electricity for that. And it was a pretty iconic one. And this is part of what Ecotricity and Dale has done in particular. He's gone out to find those real standouts, kind of almost beacons of society, and the things that are really on people's agendas. And this, at the time, everyone was talking about Millennium Dome. It was the place to go and visit, and it was a key thing then that Dale was providing electricity for them. He also, at the same time, started providing electricity for some really big businesses. One of them has been in the news recently because actually they're sort of closing down. And it's The Body Shop. Have anyone seen The Body Shop on the high streets? Again, a company with real values around sustainability, and it was quite a key one for Dale to then be providing electricity for them. Off the back of this, and over the last couple of decades, Dale has provided, or Ecotricity in particular, has provided electricity for some really kind of high-profile environmental organisations. The ones at the moment are Triodos Bank. If anyone's been to Lush, so Lush is provided by Ecotricity. But also people like Vivienne Westwood, when she was operating shops, those were provided by. So those sorts of organisations that share similar thinking, and by bringing those people together and having them along on the journey, it's a really important one as well. Now, in 2011, this is the very beginnings of electric cars, and so Dale recognised that, and this was called the Electric Highway, and he was the first person in the UK to set up a charging network. And again, it was taking risk, because this wasn't something that was very well established. You know, now it's quite a different picture. You turn up to petrol stations, and there's loads, just like this picture, really, lines and lines of these things. And actually, this was an interesting point, because this was actually before Tesla had gained the kind of momentum and notoriety. And actually, Tesla were interested in purchasing the Electric Highway. This was a few years after, about sort of 2013-14. So Dale ran that for quite a few years, alongside all these other businesses as well. And then in 2012, he decided he wanted to develop the fastest EV. So this is the fastest electric vehicle. And this is called the Nemesis. And there was considerable investment. It's based on a Lotus. That's the main chassis for it. This was about 12 years ago now, we have to say 2012, and it achieved the land speed record in the UK, travelling 150 miles an hour, so it's the fastest EV. And this was before Tesla, again, had that momentum. Dale was quite keen to sort of make out that he got there before Tesla did. Now, these are some other exciting electric vehicles that Dale has helped fund over the last few decades. So Dale himself, on a daily basis, drives an electric motorcycle, not like this one. This one is a really high-performance electric motorcycle used in the TT races on the Isle of Man. And again, this goes about 150 miles an hour, but it shows what can be achieved with electricity and with renewable power. At the bottom there is, this is more recent, the first electric hovercraft. So Dale's got an electric hovercraft. And this up here, on the right, has the land speed record for the fastest wind-powered vehicle. And I think that's quite a cool one. It's basically a wind turbine up on its end. And you can see there, these are in Salt Flats in America, where they achieved these sorts of things. But it shows that with someone who, yes, has the financial backing to be able to kind of invest in these sorts of things, but also has the vision, it shows you what you can achieve. Just then moving on to Ecotricity. So Ecotricity, UK's greenest energy company. I'm just going to dig down into what that really means, because you probably think, actually, surely all these energy providers are the same. Surely it doesn't matter where you get your energy or electricity from. So Ecotricity, 100% renewable. And what's important as well is, a lot of companies claim to be 100% renewable, but they actually buy these certificates that they swap and share. They're called REGOs. And what they do is basically allow you to say renewable when you're not really. Whereas Ecotricity is one of these companies where actually 100% renewable. You can see the breakdown there though, the majority comes from offshore wind. At the moment, it is illegal, it's not possible to build onshore wind turbines in the UK. There is a small proportion, and actually Ecotricity got one of the last wind farms that were given permission under the previous government. But what you can also see here is a breakdown of, on average, where the UK does get its electricity. You might be surprised that on average in the UK, we're still getting some of our electricity from coal. There are still coal-fired power stations in the UK, and about 3 or 4% of our electricity comes from there. Yes, we've reached now a point of momentum where about 40%, the largest proportion, does come from renewables. That, again, is one of the big success stories, is the UK has decarbonised, taken away all of the, or a lot of, the really polluting fossil fuel sources of electricity. And now, the largest proportion does come from renewables. You might be surprised, 14% from nuclear. The UK, not necessarily famous for its nuclear power stations, but we do have some. And then, yeah, gas is the next one. What we can do, though, is... Or should we come back to this one, actually? I want to jump into this. What we can do is have a look at what is happening live now. So this is a website that gives a live feed of the UK's electricity production. And so we can see at the moment, the largest proportion is coming from renewables, 39% of our electricity. It is quite a windy day. You all travelled here, you all kind of have been stood outside. 27% of our electricity at the moment is coming from wind, because it's pretty windy. Only 10% from solar, but you might be surprised actually, it's not the sunniest of days, but we're still getting 10% from the sun. At the moment, there are no coal-fired power stations producing electricity, but there's about 38% coming from gas, from fossil gas, which is a fossil fuel. I think this is quite a cool one. This is a good website to go and visit to see if the weather changes. It's a really sunny day. You can come back to this and see how much is coming from the sun. Okay. Let's go back to this bit though then. What on earth is vegan electricity? Why on earth would electricity be vegan? Does anyone know? What does it mean to be vegan? What is veganism? Yeah. Yeah, having no animal products. So this goes beyond not eating meat. It might be you don't eat honey, you might not wear leather. But what people don't realise is actually most energy providers use animal waste and use animal byproducts in some of their maybe anaerobic digestion and in the production of gas and electricity. And so Ecotricity is the only energy company that can claim that all of its energy is vegan. It hasn't had any animal products. And it might be you're sat there thinking, what difference does that make? Well, there are definitely people in society now who are really conscious about it. They don't want to have a negative impact on the rest of nature, and they think about maybe livestock as an important part of that. And so vegan energy is a thing, and Ecotricity is a big champion of that. In terms of Ecotricity then, you can see on the left-hand side, that's where all the wind farms are. The thing that makes Ecotricity a bit different as well to lots of other energy companies is that it owns the means of production. So there are lots of wind turbines that they've built over those last 30 years. And also, they've got these solar farms as well. And there's quite a few actually, well, particularly wind, I was going to say near Kent. Number 2 there actually is an interesting one. Ecotricity provides energy for Ford at their Dagenham plant. So there's a big wind turbine at Dagenham, which is where that number 2 is on there. And I think it's the Ford Transit van that uses this green renewable electricity to be able to run the production line. So Ford, again, is another company that's really been key as part of the journey as well. Okay, we're going to jump into a video here, and it's going to tell you a bit more about how solar and wind energy actually work. And we're going to go and visit some of those wind farms that we just saw there.
Hi, I'm Paul from Ecotricity, and I'm standing in this glorious mud with my colleague Steve, who's our Director of Generation. We're in Dolby at the second of the new hybrid energy parks that have recently opened, thanks to the awesome support of Ecotricity customers. Tell us about the status of this project right now.
So it's taken about 10 months to build this, and the last couple of days we've just done the final testing. And that was all successful, so now we've ramped it back up to 100% and it's all good to go.
Fantastic, okay. So what we're going to do today is follow the path of the energy, working out how it comes from the sun and the wind up there, through these panels and these turbines into your living room. Great, well let's start with the solar panels then, Steve. They're a thing of beauty, aren't they? And how many of them are there on this site?
So there's 16,000 panels on this site here.
16,000, right.
It's enough power to generate, enough power for 3,000 homes for a year.
So we've got the sun up there, just coming out from behind the cloud. How does that energy get into people's homes via one of these?
So a solar panel is made up of a couple of layers, and inside those layers are a negatively charged layer and a positively charged layer. And the solar panel works by absorbing photons from the sun. Now photons are light particles, so you don't need heat, you need light. So when the photon hits the face of the solar panel, it discharges the electrons that are inside the solar panel, and then those electrons join together and it makes a current. So all of these join together, you get more and more power, and that generates a direct current, DC, and then goes into one of these pieces of kit here, which is an inverter.
Okay.
So when it's a direct current, it then changes this to alternating current. An alternating current, AC, is what comes out of people's houses in your plugs. All your kit in your house runs from alternating current. It goes from the inverter into a transformer, and it takes the voltage up to 33,000 volts, and that's the same size as what we've got on the network over there.
Great, okay. And I believe these are double-sided panels, is that right?
That's right. So a little bit of a bonus bit of electricity that comes from the backside of it as well. From the reflected light from the ground, it goes back up those photons, and then generates power from the back as well.
So after these boxes, cables are going into the ground, right?
Yep.
Where do they go next?
So they go into that transformer's just there,
Okay.
and then they go underneath the ground all the way up to the top of the site there.
Okay, let's follow them, shall we? Okay, so now we have the wind turbines behind us, and again, tell us how the wind actually turns into electricity, Steve. What's going on up there?
So that turning motion is how electricity is generated in traditional power stations, whether it's a nuclear or gas or coal ones as well. So you want that turning motion. And the wind is what turns the blades. That's the fuel, that's free. There's a generator at the top there, generates the power in the same way as any traditional power station. So these turbines here, we've got 9 turbines, and these will provide enough power for around about just under 5,000 homes for a year.
Okay.
So in addition to the solar park just there, that's a decent amount of electricity generated in quite a small area as well.
How do they know which way the wind blows?
So on the top of each of the machines there's an anemometer. Now it's not the old school type ones, which is those 3 cups which spin, which gives the wind speed, and there's a tail on the back of it that tells you which direction the wind is going. There's a more intelligent system on there, so there's 2 sensors on the top, and it shines a beam of light, and that beam of light measures particles of dust to see how fast the dust is going, that gives the wind speed, and also which direction that dust is going, and that gives the direction of where the wind is coming from.
Okay.
So the machines themselves will turn into the wind depending on where the wind direction is. So you might hear occasionally your motors giving a little bit of a whine, pretty close to them, just as it's turning facing into the wind as well. So there's no motors up there to turn the blades, it's all done by the wind.
Wow, really quite intelligent machines then. The solar and the wind are right next to each other. Are there some benefits of them being in that close proximity?
There is, definitely. So this wind park of ours has been here for a few years, and we always knew we were going to build the solar park, so we allowed for it in our design of the substation, where we wanted to join it back up to the network there. So we call these a hybrid park, 2 forms of generation, into one point of connection up to the grid there. So these turbines here generate enough power for around about 5,000 homes. So with the solar and the wind together, that's enough power for just under 8,000 homes.
Well, we're slap bang in the middle of the site now, and I was just struck that we've got this working barn right behind us here. So life goes on as normal for the farmer, right, Steve?
Yes, the farming activities carry on. So inside the wind park here, the farmer carries on doing his farming, growing his crops in the same way. From the space point of view, it's quite a minimal impact. So the access tracks that we are standing on here, this route is already here, the farmer used that before we came along with our wind park. This has been upgraded because we've got some pretty heavy stuff that we're bringing here, and our service vans use this as well as the farmer using it as well. So from a space point of view, it's a win-win for us all. So this substation here, which was built when we built the wind farm, and that's been here for a while, but we always knew we were going to add the solar park to it. So it's been sized appropriately to add that additional equipment that the solar park is needed. So the 2 cables coming from the wind park and from the solar park coming to this building here. So this is at 33,000.
I'm going to stop it there, just because conscious of time, and I think that actually was a really interesting kind of overview of how solar and wind work, both in terms of the sites there with photons. Did anyone realise that solar panels double-sided in these farms, so that then it gets the reflection as well? Added benefit, and it just makes sense putting these two things together. And they were getting on there to talk about how actually it has quite a minimal impact, and farmers or whatever the actual land use might be around that space can kind of continue. Okay, so hybrid parks, that's what they're called. That stuff, I guess, we've known about for decades. You know, wind farms, solar farms, there's solar panels all over the place. But let's start thinking about some other things. So where Dale took this next. And now, at the beginning, there was a logo that I'm sure not many of you will have spotted. It was actually this one here, the big circular one. Has anyone seen that before? Does anyone know what it is? There's a hand up there, yeah. It's Forest Green Rovers. So yes, Dale owns, he's the owner of Forest Green Rovers, which is the greenest football club in the world. It's also one of a handful of football clubs that is completely vegan. So all the players only eat plants, and on match days they only feed the fans plant-based food. So we're going to have a quick look at a video that talks a little bit more about all the awesome stuff that Forest Green Rovers does. Now Forest Green Rovers is in League 2, it's based over near Stroud, near Bristol. It's not the biggest of football clubs. The stadium, this actually is the new stadium that they're going to build, which will be a completely wooden stadium. But the one they've got at the moment has a capacity of about 5,000 people. So it's not the biggest of football clubs. But Dale is pushing the boundaries, and the football club is pushing the boundaries on what football clubs do. Look.
Promoted into League One as all the players are going to storm onto the pitch. Derby, Sunderland, Ipswich, they're going to be eating hummus at the new lawn next season because Forest Green are in League One.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Fully Charged Show, coming from a football pitch. Not the first place you'd expect for a show about sustainable technology and the clean transport revolution. But this is a very special football pitch. It belongs to a very special football club. Because that stand there has loads of solar panels, there's loads of batteries, there's car charging over there. All the food they serve here is vegan. When they go to an away game, they go on an electric coach that's powered by solar panels. They are pretty special, and they're having a big impact on the entire world of football. Because you've got to remember, 3.5 billion people in the world are massive football fans. It's a huge audience. And this team is starting to turn the dial just a bit. So that is Forest Green Rovers in Gloucestershire. And this is the Fully Charged Show.
So the actual Forest Green adventure began just as a rescue mission. And I would say all of the success in terms of communicating to a new audience and the profile and stuff like that, that came about afterwards. It's like a happy accident, you know. So I went to save my local football club and didn't think anything about it until day one found we were serving red meat, and then day two found something else, and within a week or two realised I had to change it so much that I'd be creating a green football club. And then I said to myself, do you know what? I'll also be taking this message to an audience that stereotypically won't be open for it, right? And that encouraged me. I thought that's worth doing. And so we just doubled down, created the Green Football Club, started the communication with our fans. And next thing you know, FIFA say we're the greenest football club in the world, the UN love us, and we can all look at it and say football is the most incredible platform to put out a green message.
So yeah, we got involved in 2010. We were in the Conference League at the time. It was the club was 123 years old. And Dale really thought, well, maybe I can just help them out. They needed a bit of money to help with salaries. but really quickly got involved to the point that he became chairman. So within about 2 to 3 months, that was by the end of 2010. By 2017, we were promoted, so we got promoted into League 2. But now in 22-23, we're going to be in League 1. So we've literally just got ourselves promoted. So as it goes, it's sort of National League, then it's League 2, then it's League 1, and then Championship, and then on up to the Premiership. The dream is the Championship. I'm not sure if we get to Premiership, but heading in the right direction and doing really well.
So, Henry, this is such an extraordinary football team, I think, a football ground. But can you tell us actually about this the grass we're walking on now? This is a bit different to what is it?
I'm going to jump in here because I think, again, there's things I could explain maybe a bit quicker. So this is a chance also to reflect on your schools. So they've already said that the football club has all the stands covered in solar panels. Has your school got solar panels on it? And if not, why not? He's about to just talk about the pitch. It's an organic pitch. Doesn't have any chemicals put on it to fertilise it. They use seaweed as a natural fertiliser. But also, what you might not realise is most football clubs have a pitch that has plastic in it. And partly that's for durability, so that then it sustains a really good quality playing surface. But Forest Green Rovers, it's completely grass, it's completely natural. And they managed to play football on it when they need to. The other bit then is food. So it's this idea that it's plant-based, 100% plant-based. And again, think, a lot of you have just had food in school. What proportion of the food that's being provided at your school is plant-based? Well, there's a football club where all the food is plant-based. And maybe you could think, well, why is my school not the same? Why does my school not provide more plant-based options? Something else about this is the kit. So you're all wearing a school uniform, and I wonder if you know where your school uniform was made. What material it's made from? Who made it? Is it made from natural fibres? Is it made from plastic or oil-derived fibres? Forest Green Rovers, the kits, they had 1 year they were using the waste product from coffee beans, and that was woven into the fabric. At the moment, they're using sustainable wood fibres that is then also part of the shirts that they play with. So there's lots of kind of sustainable alternatives in clothing, and also there's just the idea that you might continue wearing it as long as possible. It's slightly different with the football club because every season they have to have a new kit. There is one football club, not Forest Green Rovers, that did end up retaining a kit for the following year. But one thing that the club does is, particularly with the fans, they have a kind of bring and swap or a swap shop for football boots and for kit. And again, I'm sure it might already be happening at your school, where you have a second-hand uniform sale or maybe somewhere where the uniform can be swapped. And that's, again, a kind of reflection in terms of the football club's a good example of what could have happened in your school. Okay, I'm going to jump on now to some of the other, what I think is really cutting edge and different. This is green gas. So traditionally, fossil gas or natural gas is found in the ground. And again, just like oil and coal, it's a fossil fuel that we pipe and then use. Now, fossil gas is less carbon emitting in terms of the carbon dioxide emissions. So of the three fossil fuels, yes, it is the cleanest, but it still causes carbon dioxide emissions, as well as lots of other damaging impacts on the planet. And what Dale did is he said, well, actually, there's an alternative, and this comes mainly from Scandinavia, where they've got really progressive ideas of how they use agricultural land. Now, you might have heard of this as biofuels, but actually this is slightly different. This is a really diverse grass that is really, really low emissions, and the process means it's almost zero emissions. So it's a way of keeping our gas infrastructure. So most of your homes will be heated with gas infrastructure, with a boiler, and it will go to radiators and heat your space. What Dale and kind of the Green Britain group believes is actually that's a bit destructive and a waste. if we're going to rip out all of the gas infrastructure, maybe there's a happy medium. And so I've got another little video clip to show you about this new green gas initiative.
Big news today is a major discovery, a new gas field in Britain, and it has the potential to power our whole country completely with gas, a new kind of gas. So this gas field is literally the fields of our country, where we can grow grass, and we can turn that into gas and put it into our gas grid and power ourselves, carbon free. Behind me is the first project that we're building, our first green gas mill. 3,000 acres of land around us will grow the grass to make enough gas for 4,000 local homes by around about this time next year. It's a very exciting discovery. It's our new North Sea and it's right underneath our feet.
So today there's a big concrete pour happening. So this is the bases where the chambers are going to sit on top of. The big circular ones behind me here are where the main digesters are going to be placed on top of that, and that's where the grass digesting material is going to be put into there, and that's where it ferments away and makes the green gas. So once the bases are poured and we put the chambers on top of those later in this year, then a lot of the pipe work where all the digestate and the gases get pumped from one chamber, one section to another, will start to be put in. A lot of the pipe work is above ground in an anaerobic digestion plant. That's so just in case there is leaks that you cannot see it, and it's easy to fix. But when it's finished, you'll see the chambers, they're quite tall, they're 12, 14 metres tall, with the domes on top of those as well, where all the gas is made from there. The construction process for this plant should take us to round about beginning of...
So this actually is now finished and in production, but this is a bit of a diagram there to show you it's a really simple process, and again, it's kind of tested, proven, it is happening in other parts of the world. But this idea of producing gas that has zero emissions, zero carbon emissions. And also, though, part of Dale's argument is, if we move away from eating meat and we move to more of a plant-based diet, it frees up land. At the moment, the largest land use across the whole of the UK is for the rearing of animals. So we give over so much space for them, and actually could we use some of that for other things, like producing a completely sustainable gas. Another thing is grid-scale batteries. So these are big containers. One of the big problems is wind turbines and solar panels they only work when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing. And let's say you want to use that energy at another time when there is no wind. Yes, if you've got a real combination of these different things, you can kind of keep having electricity, but what these do is help to store it. So this container is full of batteries, and the idea is you can put this in somewhere like that hybrid farm in the middle of a landscape, and it will store the electricity produced by the solar panels and the wind turbines, and then release it when the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining. These are also really effective when you want electricity in remote locations, and a good example is music festivals. So there are lots of music festivals. One of them is WOMAD, which is again over near Bristol, that will have these grid-scale batteries, these big containers dropped in to provide completely renewable electricity because they've been charged up by the wind and the sun. So again, this kind of technology is becoming more and more common. Let's jump to the next one. Let's see if I can get there without playing the video. So this is direct capture of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And Dale is doing this. He's producing something called sky gas, bottling the pollution of other people. So carbon dioxide will just emit into the sky. Dale's got a facility over in Stroud that is sucking this out of the sky, bottling it. There's all kinds of uses for this. One of them is in the production of diamonds. And actually, I'll just take a moment to read something that Dale has written, because this sums up a lot of what Dale is thinking. And it's just disappeared from my phone. What I might do is show you this video whilst I find it. This is all about something called Sky Diamond, and it's using that carbon dioxide, someone else's pollution, to produce the most sustainable diamond in the world.
We have to find a way to bring large amounts of carbon back out of the atmosphere that we put there and lock it up somehow.
One solution is to pull in air, remove the carbon dioxide, and pump that deep underground. Capturing carbon this way can be expensive. And Dale's solution is to turn the carbon in the air into something very valuable.
I was struck by the simple concept that the most enduring form of carbon that we know about is the diamond. And wouldn't it be amazing if we were to take carbon out of the atmosphere and just lock it up permanently? But into something also that's great fun. We have what we call our sky mining works. And this is where we pull the gases we need from the atmosphere.
The carbon captured from the air is fed into a diamond oven, a sealed chamber containing a diamond seed. Under very high temperatures, carbon gas bonds to the seed and forms a diamond. This whole process is fueled by solar and wind power.
What we found in the process is the carbon footprint of what we avoid, the diamond mining of the earth, is enormous. It's 3 days worth of renewable energy to make a single carat of stone that avoids a half a ton of greenhouse gas emissions if you dump that out of the ground. And so it represents a way for us to have the bling that we like, to live this fun lifestyle, but actually without the impact. We like to call it bling without the sting, because we miss the environmental impact, the social impact, as well as the climate impact. This is where we need to be in our industrial processes now. We need to be cleaning up the atmosphere, the land, and water in the process of making whatever it is that we're making. We've got to reverse the tide of the last 100 years as we make things.
So I found what I was going to read you before, and what it says, let me jump off that quickly so far. Yeah. Okay, it says, another way, this is summarising that another way phrase. We don't need to give up something like energy. What we need to do is just replace the fossil fuels with renewable energy. We don't need to stop travelling. We just need to electrify transport. And we don't need to stop eating. We just need to eat plants, not animals. So it's a different way of living. It's not about going back to living in the dark in caves and some sort of old lifestyle that we used to have. It's about actually just swapping out for renewable alternatives. And the diamonds is a great example. He's saying we don't need to give up diamonds. Traditional diamonds have got a really bad story in terms of blood diamonds and their impact on the planet. But actually we can come up with a renewable and sustainable alternative. And that is a really key part of what Dale and of his philosophy. And where that philosophy has taken him now is to invest and set up the world's first electric airline. They're called EcoJets. At the moment, they're testing these aircraft and a slightly smaller single propeller aircraft over in Gloucestershire. And the idea is within the next few months, they're going to be running a commercial operation internally in the UK with an electric hydrogen combination using renewable electricity to produce hydrogen that then within the aircraft is used to run an electric engine for these propellers. There's actually, only in the last few days, a job advert for cabin crew came out for this EcoJet. And so it's a really good example of a green career. You can still fly, but the alternative is using electric. Now, one of the last things I just wanted to finish then, after talking about all of those different businesses, was this. The one thing that's been missing out of everything we've talked about is the politics of this. So Dale, yes, has set up all of these green businesses and spent decades showing how you can do business in a green way. I mean, the other thing I haven't talked about is Ecotricity in the Green Britain Group is quite interesting in that it's a not-for-dividend business. And what that means is there aren't shareholders who are taking out profit or dividends from the business. Instead, things are reinvested. And that, again, is a kind of interesting business model compared to other businesses. And there's really obvious examples around how our water is managed at the moment. And if it was not run that way, maybe it might be run differently. It might be a kind of better alternative. Dale, though, has also been famous in a political sense as well, partly because he has been outspoken. Outspoken also in places that you might not normally think about a green message. So I'll show you in a minute a Daily Telegraph article that he wrote and ran, and he's got a relationship with lots of these other newspapers. And again, it comes with the football. It's the idea of talking not to the converted, it's about talking to other audiences, and that's something that Dale has been really keen to do as well. So Dale became kind of a bit more famous because he was funding Just Stop Oil. He put in hundreds of thousands of pounds into Just Stop Oil. And at the time, he was really passionate and thought, yes, this is how we make the change. We can shake people into realising the urgency of this situation. And then he took a step back and then has actually been a really big a big donor in the Labour Party. Again, because he realises that maybe political change is really needed in terms of change for the good and for that green future. And he's also been someone who has been happy to go and speak to, you might have seen Talk TV, or Kate Hopkins is another sort of prominent speaker in this, or there's lots of these kinds of journalists and people in the media that Dale's really keen to go and speak to, and to I guess that's one thing I'm trying to say is it's really important that we engage wider audiences, and that's something that's been true of Dale throughout his career. So this is where I throw it out to you, and I say, look, there's an opportunity to continue this and to join the green revolution. And we can break down our lifestyles into transport, energy, food and nature, and that's what Dale has done. He's focused businesses on each of these things. There's a few that I haven't talked about today that maybe go into some of these other ones, particularly food. Transport, energy and food make up about 80% of our impact on the rest of nature. Those are the three things that we really need to focus on. We've already said that energy, we've decarbonised, we've done a lot in that space. But you could think about your own lives, your own choices, but also about how we can influence other people in those spaces, in those choices, and it's through our actions that we can help to make this green future. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you.